I hadn't spoken to my parents in 5 years. Not since they believed my sister's lie and erased me from their lives overnight. Tonight, I was on ER duty, running on coffee and muscle memory, when a familiar last name flashed on the intake screen. My hands froze. The patient was critical. Family screaming. Doctors rushing. Then I heard my mother crying in the hallway, begging for help from strangers, unaware one of them was me. In that moment, the past and present collided, and I had to decide what kind of doctor and daughter I really was that night forever changed. It started with a lie so simple, so clean, that no one thought to question it. My sister told our parents I had dropped out of medical school. She said I was partying, wasting money, embarrassing the family. She cried while saying it, played the role perfectly. By the time I found out what she told them, the damage was already done. My parents didn't call to ask if it was true. They didn't ask for proof. They didn't ask me anything at all. They just stopped answering my calls. At first, I thought it was a misunderstanding. I sent texts. I left voicemails. I emailed my mother screenshots of my grades, my hospital rotations, my attendance records. There was no reply. A week later, my father sent one cold message: "Don't contact us until you get your life together." That was it. No questions. No conversation. Just a door slammed shut. Being cut off wasn't loud or dramatic. It was quiet. Holidays came and went in silence. My birthday passed with no call, no card. When I tried to visit home, my mother refused to open the door. She said my sister had told them everything and they were done being disappointed. In 1 month, I lost my family, my support system, and the sense that I belonged anywhere. Medical school doesn't slow down for heartbreak. I still had exams, night shifts, patients depending on me. I studied in empty libraries, cried in bathroom stalls, and learned how to swallow pain before putting on my white coat. While my classmates went home to family dinners and encouragement, I worked extra shifts to pay rent and tuition. I slept 4 hours a night and told myself feelings could wait. The isolation was the hardest part. There was no one to celebrate small wins with. No one to call after my first successful procedure. When I matched into residency, I sat alone in my apartment, staring at the email, smiling and crying at the same time. My parents never came to my graduation. They weren't at my wedding either. I walked down the aisle knowing 2 empty seats would never be filled. I heard bits and pieces about my family through distant relatives. My sister still lived at home. She was praised for telling the truth and protecting the family. The lie grew roots, became history. Correcting it felt impossible. After a while, I stopped trying. Survival took all my energy. Years passed. I became stronger, quieter, more controlled. I learned how to function without approval, without love from the people who were supposed to give it unconditionally. The pain didn't disappear. It settled somewhere deep and learned to stay silent. I told myself the past was over. I had a career, a life, a future. My family was just a chapter I'd closed. I didn't know that lie was still waiting for me, patient, ready to resurface when I least expected it. Medical school became my entire world, not because I loved it more than anything else, but because it was the only place where pain stayed quiet. In the hospital, emotions had rules. You focused on vitals, charts, and protocols. You didn't ask why your parents hadn't called in years. You didn't wonder if your sister ever felt guilty. You just worked. Long hours turned into longer nights, and exhaustion slowly replaced grief. I told myself that if I kept moving, the past wouldn't catch up. Residency was harder than I imagined. The pressure was constant, unforgiving. Lives rested in my hands, while my own felt strangely empty. Other residents complained about their families worrying too much, calling too often. I smiled and stayed silent. No one worried about me. No one checked in. When I passed major exams, there was no celebratory dinner, no proud phone call. I learned to congratulate myself in the mirror, quietly, before heading back to work. Graduation day came faster than I expected. I watched families fill the auditorium, cameras flashing, parents crying with pride. I scanned the crowd out of habit, even though I already knew. My parents weren't there. They never would be. I accepted my diploma, shook hands, and walked off stage with a smile that felt rehearsed. That night, I folded my gown and placed it in the closet, alone, the silence louder than applause. I got married during residency, a small ceremony squeezed between shifts. My partner stood beside me, steady and patient, understanding the pieces of me that were still broken. 2 seats in the front row stayed empty. I told people my parents couldn't travel. That lie felt easier than the truth. As I walked down the aisle, I felt joy and grief collide, both real, both heavy. Love didn't erase loss. It simply learned to exist alongside it. There were nights I drove home after 30-hour shifts and let myself feel everything I had buried. I would sit in my car, engine off, hands on the steering wheel, breathing through the ache. I missed my mother's voice. I missed my father's quiet approval. I missed having a family that knew who I really was. But I also felt anger, sharp and controlled. They chose a lie over me. They never asked. They never looked back. Over time, something inside me changed. The pain stopped screaming and started whispering. I became calm, measured, careful with my emotions. Patients saw a composed doctor, someone reliable and focused. They didn't see the girl who once begged her parents to listen. I told myself this version of me was stronger. Independence became armor. Silence became survival. Every milestone felt incomplete, but I kept going. Promotion after promotion, responsibility after responsibility. I built a life from the ground up without the people who raised me. I learned that success doesn't heal everything. It doesn't rewrite the past. It just gives you somewhere to stand while you carry it. Sometimes, in quiet moments between patients, I imagined confronting my sister, asking her why, asking my parents if they ever doubted her story. But those conversations stayed in my head, unfinished and unresolved. I chose peace over closure, distance over constant hurt. By the time I became an attending physician, I believed I had made peace with everything. I had a career I earned, a family I chose, and a past I thought I had accepted. I didn't know that the hospital, the very place that taught me control, would one day force me to face the one thing I never truly healed. The night it happened felt ordinary at first. The ER was busy in the familiar way, monitors beeping, stretchers rolling in, nurses calling out vitals. I was halfway through my shift, focused, steady, moving from one patient to the next on muscle memory alone. Then a trauma alert came through. Female patient. Unresponsive. ETA 2 minutes. I pulled on gloves and stepped into position without thinking. When the stretcher burst through the doors, the energy in the room shifted. Paramedics shouted details. Blood pressure dropping. Oxygen unstable. I leaned in, scanning the chart as it loaded on the screen. That's when I saw the last name. My chest tightened. It couldn't be a coincidence. I told myself names repeat. Families are big. Cities are bigger. But something in me already knew. I looked up at the patient's face and felt the room tilt. It was my sister. She was pale, barely breathing, her body still except for the frantic rise and fall of her chest under assisted oxygen. For a split second, I froze. Years of distance collapsed into one unbearable moment. The lie, the silence, the life we never spoke about again. Then training took over. I pushed everything down and started giving orders. For access, labs, imaging, call surgery. My voice was calm, professional, steady, nothing like the chaos inside me. As we worked, I became aware of voices outside the trauma bay. Familiar ones. My mother's crying cut through the noise like a blade. My father's voice followed, shaking, desperate. They were begging the nurse for updates, asking if their daughter was going to live. They didn't know I was there. They didn't know who was standing a few feet away, fighting to keep her alive. At one point, my mother grabbed my arm as I stepped into the hallway. She looked straight through me, eyes swollen with fear. "Please," she said, her voice breaking. "She's all we have. She's a good girl. Please save her." I nodded, unable to speak, and gently pulled away. She didn't recognize me. 5 years of absence had erased me completely. Back inside, my sister's condition worsened. Complications stacked quickly, one after another. I adjusted medications, coordinated with specialists, made rapid decisions that could change everything. There was no room for hesitation. No space for personal history. Just the patient in front of me and the responsibility I carried. Still, memories surfaced between commands. Us as kids. Shared rooms. Shared secrets. I wondered if she ever thought about me. If she remembered the lie that destroyed our family. If she understood what it cost. I didn't have answers. I didn't have time. Hours passed like minutes. Finally, we stabilized her enough to transfer her to intensive care. The immediate danger was over, but the outcome was uncertain. I stepped out into the hallway again, exhaustion crashing over me. My parents rushed toward me, hope and fear tangled in their faces. "Is she going to be okay?" my father asked, his voice barely holding together. I took a breath. "She's alive," I said carefully. "The next few hours are critical." My mother started crying, thanking me, holding her hands together like she was praying. "God bless you," she said. "Thank you for helping our daughter." I stood there, listening to their gratitude, feeling the weight of everything they didn't know. I was the daughter they had cut off, the one they chose not to believe, the one standing in front of them now, saving the child they loved without question. As I walked away, I realized this wasn't just a medical emergency. It was the moment the past had been waiting for, the collision I could no longer avoid. The hospital corridor had gone quiet in that strange way it does after a crisis, when everything feels suspended between relief and fear. I stood a few steps away from my parents, my heart pounding harder than it had during the code itself. I had rehearsed this moment 1,000 times in my head over the years, but now that it was real, every word felt heavy. My father looked at me again, squinting like he was trying to place my face. "Doctor," he said softly, "can we see her?" I swallowed. "You will," I replied. "But there's something you need to know first." They waited, anxious, confused. My mother wiped her eyes, still shaking. I took a slow breath, grounding myself the way I did before delivering bad news. "My name is Doctor," I paused, then said my last name. The reaction was immediate. My mother's hands dropped to her sides. My father's face drained of color. The hallway felt suddenly too small. That's not possible," my father whispered. "Our daughter, she dropped out." I finished for him quietly. "That's what you were told." Silence stretched between us, thick and unbearable. My mother's eyes filled again, but this time with something different, recognition. Horror. "It's you," she said, her voice barely audible. You're a daughter." I nodded. "I never left medical school," I said. "I never stopped. I tried to tell you. You didn't listen." The words hit them harder than any accusation. My father leaned back against the wall, his knees unsteady. "We thought. Your sister said." "She lied," I said, calm but firm. "And you believed her. For 5 years." My mother covered her mouth, a sob escaping despite her effort to hold it in. "We cut you off," she whispered. "We missed everything." "My graduation," I said. "My wedding. My life." Guilt settled over them like a weight. My father's eyes were wet now, his voice breaking. "Why didn't you come back? Why didn't you fight harder?" I looked at him steadily. "I did," I said. "At first. Then I learned how to survive without you." The truth hung there, raw and undeniable. There was no anger in my voice, no need to raise it. Calm made it sharper. My mother reached for my hand, hesitated, then pulled back, as if unsure she still had the right. "We're so sorry," she said. "We were wrong." I nodded once. "I know." At that moment, a nurse stepped out of the ICU and called my name. "Doctor, we need you." I turned back to my parents. "Your daughter is stable," I said, professional again. "She's alive." Tears streamed down my mother's face. Gratitude, regret, and grief tangled together. I walked away, my white coat brushing past them, realizing something important had shifted. The truth was finally out. The past had spoken. But forgiveness, I knew, was a different decision, one I hadn't made yet. I completed my shift like any other, charts signed, instructions given, emotions carefully contained. My sister was alive. I had done my duty, nothing more, nothing less. I didn't stand outside her room or wait for gratitude. Distance wasn't punishment, it was protection. I saw my parents once, sitting beside her, finally afraid of losing what they once took for granted. They didn't stop me. Maybe they couldn't. As I left the hospital, the night felt quiet, settled. No closure, no forgiveness, just truth. I had saved a life with steady hands and a calm heart. But the family I once waited for had already disappeared.